Welcome in to the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard A. the Cruz.
Physically.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor for Raider.
Spiritually.
It is Monday, June 26, 2023. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at the Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, Patreon.com/the Gaming Discourse, where you can support us for $2, $4, $7, or $10, and you can get early access to videos, access to our Discord server, more fun stuff like that.
Also check out Gaming Discourse FM, where we highlight some of our favorite music and talk about them and listen to them.
Thank you very much. What was I going to say? Oh,
you got a new video out?
Yeah, I posted a new review, Amnesia the Bunker.
I watched it.
You did?
I did, and I liked it.
Review my review. Go.
It was reviewy.
Using our review scale, how do you review the review?
Oh, that's an S.
Yeah.
They're all S's, baby.
Oh, thanks, man.
Solid
So yeah, I don't know. Did I publish it before our last podcast? I don't think so.
No, you didn't.
You talked about
Yeah.
Okay.
it would be out soon.
Yeah.
The last
So
podcast.
I liked Amnesia the Bunker more than I liked Amnesia Rebirth, which is their previous Amnesia game before this one. And before Rebirth, they made Soma, which isn't an Amnesia game, but it takes all the same horror elements. It's just I don't think it's set in the Amnesia universe. Even though it could be. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So the Bunker was good. I just didn't think it was spectacular or new or anything like that. It's a really simple premise, and I think you can I appreciated and I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is. Appreciated how elegant the design of the game is, because it's a really basic concept. You can see them putting it together on a table. They draw a map and they go, okay, like a board game. Here's all the places the player's going to go. Here's the items they have to get to. Here's the safe room in the middle. And then here's the tunnels that the monster will come out of. Now we'll code it, put in the AI, put in the resource management. Really simple concept, but it works really well. So basically, the game is set in a bunker, right? It's not open world. It's like one big level. I would compare it to Alien Isolation. So you move around this bunker. You have to get... there's not really puzzles as much as there is like you have to figure out how to open a door, find a key, that kind of thing. You have to figure out there are rats that are like mutated, and if you mess with them, they'll bite you and they'll damage you. Oh, wow. So you have to figure out like, how do I get by rats? You can light a torch and like swing a torch at them and they'll run away. You can throw a grenade at them and blow them up, whatever. But you have to go through this bunker. You have to try not to make noise because that's the primary way the monster detects you. And in the bunker, you have a generator that takes fuel. So you turn on the generator. You have a pocket watch that tells you how much time you have until the generator is kaput, until it runs out of gas. And when the lights go out is when the monster really starts to hunt, right? It comes out of the walls and it really hunts you down. With the lights on, it's safer. The monster will occasionally come out and try to find you, but it'll go away faster. The biggest difference between this and previous Amnesia games is that you can stay in the dark and you're fine. Previous Amnesia games are famous for if you go in the dark, your character starts to lose sanity or something like that, and pretty quickly. And this one, you can sit in the dark and you're fine. So I ended up playing much of the game just in the dark, if I could.
Being silent.
Yeah, and just like walking through dark hallways, just like staying close to the wall so I could sort of track where I was. I enjoyed it. If you like Amnesia and you like those kinds of games, I would recommend it. But I pointed out in my review that I played through Penumbra a couple months ago for the first time. And it reminded me of Penumbra, but Penumbra came out in like 2008. But in Penumbra, there are moments where you can pick up like a box and move the box in front of a hole in the wall. That way, when you do something, the monsters that come after you in Penumbra, they hit that box and they have to like destroy the box. So it gives you a time to get away. And it's the same thing in the bunker. If you see a hole in the wall, you can roll like a barrel or a box over there, and if the monster tries to come out of the hole, the monster will have to like bang at it for a couple seconds before it actually can exit. So it gives you a few seconds to get away or do whatever you're doing. So it's conceptually it's smooth, well made, works well, but it's just not innovative or new. So that's basically my main criticism. But still fun. And I liked it better than Rebirth. Rebirth had a lot of set pieces, had a lot of, I hate the term cinematic moments, but I don't know what to call it at the moment. But moments that are more, set pieces that aren't really like dynamic in a gameplay sense, but are more like spectacle. You're amazed at what you're seeing on screen. Bunker didn't have any of that because it's all about the emergence of its gameplay and of how you get past obstacles and stuff like that. But I enjoyed it more for that. So yeah. Let's see, what else have I been playing? Oh, I finished Alan Wake.
Yeah,
I wanted to go back through. I haven't played Alan Wake since it came out. It came out in 2010, I think.
Yes.
I want to say 2010.
No. Well, I'll look.
Thank you. And I think I played it maybe a year after it came out.
Yeah.
Played it through, finished it, never went back to it. And I got to say, I think Alan Wake's combat has aged pretty poorly. This is a discussion about Alan Wake and Control that I think has probably been had to exhaustion on the internet. But Alan Wake, and it also brings to mind like the purpose of combat. What is it there to do? Why are you having the player? What's your goal with combat, right? And I think sometimes, I don't know, maybe people view combat as a challenge to be overcome, but I don't necessarily think that's true, right? I think sometimes combat can just be fun or engaging, not necessarily something you have to get through or figure out how to get through. But Alan Wake kind of feels like and it's 12 years later, whatever. It kind of feels like the combat, they wanted it to be, they felt like they needed to make it tricky or a little difficult because I thought some of it was just really tedious and annoying. So I don't know how much you guys remember of Alan Wake's combat, but you have to shine the flashlight at enemies to like get their darkness away. And then once their darkness away, you can shoot them with your gun, right? The premise is fine, but basically there are numerous moments where they throw a ton of enemies at you. Enemies are fast, so even if you run away, they'll catch up with Alan. Alan's stamina doesn't have a stamina meter, but he does tire out and can't sprint anymore. And basically, as soon as you tire out, enemies are right on your heels and they'll hit you. Alan can't. His health regenerates, but you don't get it's not like Resident Evil where your health increases, where you can find like abilities that increase your health or whatever.
All you have is what you have.
So at the beginning of the game and at the end of the game, there are enemies that can kill you in 2 shots, and at the end of the game, those enemies are still killing you in 2 shots. So it's kind of there's no real progression there. There are enemies that swing their weapons twice, and you can dodge enemy attacks. If you dodge the wrong way, you get hit. But if certain types of enemies hit you with their first attack, Alan goes into a taking damage animation that you can't get out of. So you're guaranteed to get hit by that second animation, which is like half of your health gone. So I just don't think its combat aged very well. I think a lot of it was maybe not padding, but maybe a fear that they didn't want the game to be too short. So there are entire sections where it's like, I don't need to be fighting anybody here. Let me take in some of the atmosphere, some of the story, whatever. But it was still enjoyable. The ending of that game is great. It's not a lake, it's an ocean. And I'll go through the 2 bonus episodes probably in a few months or something.
And then you got to go through the sub-sequel.
I don't know if I want to do American Nightmare or not. Is it good at all?
It's good. It's wild. Good? Yeah, it's crazier than the first game. But it deals with the darkness that has basically taken Alan and become him and is now loose in the real world.
Oh wow, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So you wouldn't be okay with the action system if I very loosely gave you the excuse that Alan is a writer and he has no stamina. And
what are you saying? Come on. What are you saying about writers?
Well, the combat is so bad because he's not a fighter. He's a writer. Like, he can't fight. So.
I wholly reject your premise.
Okay.
He's not an action hero. Yeah. He's just an average guy.
Okay, well, I don't think that excuses... just because he's an average guy doesn't mean that you have to fight, a bunch of enemies every 10 minutes. So I understand the issue of him not being able to sprint forever is not necessarily the issue, right? It's a part that is part of a larger sum of issues with the combat.
He's squishy from sitting around in a cushy New York apartment.
Okay. Well, I'm right and whatever. No, I'm kidding. No, but I do think the combat gets redundant. And
it does. Yes,
and there's way too many moments where it's like, do I really need to fight all these enemies? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of moments where it's like, not like hold the zone, but it's like, I don't know.
It's all approached the same way every single time.
And there are moments where you find hidden caches, and it's like, oh, hey, I found a hidden cache. And then bad guys attack you. And it's like, can you just let me be happy that I found a hidden cache? Because I don't want to fight these guys. And you can just run away and run through a light and they disappear. So there are multiple times where I just ran past enemies because I just didn't want to fight. Not because it's too difficult, but because it's just time consuming and tedious. And the story is really interesting. A lot of it is straight lifted from Twin Peaks. Alan Wake was not inspired by Twin Peaks as much as it was Control V, Control C, Control V almost. But yeah, I still enjoyed it. It's not a bad game, and it's 12 years old. So, I don't know. If I were to sit down and really think about it, I'd have a better, more nuanced opinion. But that's basically all I would like to discuss for now. So you guys can talk about what you've been playing.
I've been quite busy. I've been playing Diablo 4. I started up Diablo 4. I've been playing that. I think it's highly enjoyable. I have that itch again to do nothing but find new stuff and put it on my character and see how much better it is than the last piece I got. And I'm still working the ins and outs of everything because I played till about level 12, and then I started playing with my friends. And when you play with other people in your group, what I like about that is that everyone's progress is kind of done together in a sense, unlike other games recently that have not followed suit. But that unfortunately means that I get confused with the structure of the quest lines. So in certain games, if I were to play multiplayer or cooperatively with other players, if we had classes and there was a specific mission for me to do, I'm the only one who has to do that. Everybody else has to leave. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever encountered that in other games, but
yeah, kind of.
Because it's a very specific story to that person and everybody else can't So for the longest time, up until about level 25, I did not unlock my third tab of abilities because I had to do a mission for specifically my rogue. I chose to be a rogue, and it unlocked back at level 10. So I had other abilities I could have been using or other specific class things I could have been doing. But I had to do my specific rogue mission, and the entire time I thought that it was something I had to do on my own without everyone there. And then I found out it wasn't. You could just do it with everyone, and they will help you out. And so that was kind of freeing in a sense, but also a bit embarrassing because it's just I kind of unintentionally made the game harder for myself. But that's okay because now I've learned my lesson, and everything is fun. And I think that the way they have kind of the open world setup is neat with other players kind of running around that you'll meet every now and again. Everyone has seemed very helpful when I come across them, and they'll either help you if you're in the middle of an event, a random event going on, or if you just pass by them, they'll kind of stop for a second because they'll kind of be are you going to follow me or come my way? What is going on? So that's very fun to see in that aspect, but I'm having a blast with it. And I know what you mean by the kind of cinematic camera that they use whenever you talk to people at certain times, and the camera just kind of swoops down and kind of gets closer and moves around a bit. I do think that's very nice, a nice touch to add. It's something that's of course been done before, but in this type of setting when most of the time, I don't know if Pillars of Eternity does it, but I know the old Baldur's Gates never did that. It's just, you're always just looking there, and that's fine because I don't need to look anywhere else, but when you kind of get closer, it feels more personal than anything.
Yep. And there's a lot of cinematography. Once you start playing through the story, you get to some of those cutscenes with Lilith.
Yeah.
I think you'll really enjoy some of the cinematography, some of the way they shoot things. It's really nice.
Yeah, Blizzard, despite other dealings, their cutscenes have always been good. Always been top notch. And I was telling the buddy I was playing with, it's like, I don't even play World of Warcraft, but if a new cutscene comes out, I'll watch that damn thing. I'll watch it, man. It was the last one they released or whatever when what's her name, Sylvanas, like resurrected the entire horde, and she was like, for the horde. I was like, this is fucking sick. And I don't even play.
Don't even know anything about WoW.
Nope. But it's awesome. And then I took a break from Diablo 4 to start up Final Fantasy 16. Started up Final Fantasy 16 last night. I did not get to play the demo because I was getting ready for a trip, and I downloaded it and everything, and I realized I wouldn't even have time, so I deleted it and I installed the game and I played it about 4 or 5 hours last night, and I'm extremely happy with the game right now. I've been a consumer of Japanese media for a very long time, since I was very young, and I don't know if there's some sort of word for it. I'll use the phrase phenomena, but Japanese media always follows kind of like the same archetype for video games, for movies. I mentioned before, they love their melodrama. They love their cliches. They love their...
And I'm sure all cultures have. I'm sure American fiction has similar, Sure.
But there have always been, as I've played JRPGs, as I watched anime, as I watched movies, there's always been that inkling of, this would be so much better if they took that like slight extra step to do things. And there have been some media that have done that and been very enjoyable. But Final Fantasy now on its 16th mainline entry and billionth other entry, I think has finally taken those slight steps to do something that story-wise is initially for me in this first 4 hours really captivating. Although some of it is cliche, I think some of the twists they've set up and some of the events that happen in the first couple of hours I felt were very interesting and very emotionally driven. The added blood, gore, violence, slight sexuality, like all of that has kind of like taken me aback because of how Final Fantasy has been like for years and years and years. And I appreciate it. I appreciate it so much. And I think that's what's helping to elevate it more. But I find it weird because I get all of that stuff from other media, but because it's done in a media that does not do it normally, it kind of hits harder.
Jarring.
It hits harder for
me. I'm not somebody that has played a ton of the Final Fantasy games, and I've never really been into them. But even when I played the demo, I was like, oh crap, there's blood, there's that you watch people get like incinerated.
Some very intense moments, yeah.
It was very Game of Thronesy, that's like the straight go-to obvious comparison. It's very brutal. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I love the gameplay. I love the action hack and slash gameplay. I think it's very fluid. I think it's extremely responsive. Although I don't know if everyone will be happy with it, particularly old fans of Final Fantasy who like that, like stand and wait combat, the active time battle stuff. The levels, I think something is people will be disappointed in as well, are fairly linear. They're kind of presented as stages. You don't get an open world, it seems like so far. You have points on your map you just select and you go to, and that entire area up until you finish the chapter, it seems like it's a chapter, until you finish that, it will be somewhat linear. There are other pathways you can go down and find items or other battles and chests and stuff, but so far the level that I've been in is fairly enclosed and kind of point A to B, which was a big problem that fans had for Final Fantasy 13. I think the game looks gorgeous. I think the about 80% of the time, the cutscenes are very well done, and the technology that they use for the lip syncing is incredible. I think when it's in game, it's very noticeable that it's not done correctly, but from a Japanese studio to correctly lip sync English voices, I think is very, very, very impressive. And also probably the best looking forest I've ever seen in a game. Ever.
Wow, okay.
Ever. Yeah. Maybe. But yeah, like I said, I've only done about 4 or 5 hours of it, but I'm greatly enjoying it. I'm greatly enjoying every single character. All the voice acting is very well done. And I want to get more into it, but need more time. But that's it.
Okay. Connor, you just burnt your tongue drinking some coffee?
No,
I'm so sorry. That ended quickly.
Straining coffee out of my mustache. So I finally beat the 1500 turn long the 1500 turn game of Civ 6, which took too long to complete.
Is there any auto turns to that? Like, can you just set?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
But it still takes forever to do.
I'm not saying that that's what you did the entire time, but I'm just asking because
no, there was a point between within the last 150 turns where I was just like, next turn.
Yeah. Okay.
Wait a minute. Next turn. Wait a minute. Next turn. I ended up taking first place on score in the game. And the last 10 turns took about an hour.
Really?
Yes.
Why is it just deciding what's going on? Or?
No, because a world war broke out.
Oh, wonderful.
And can you guess who started it?
Yeah.
Gandhi.
Oh, okay.
Makes sense.
Gandhi started a nuclear war.
I don't know what else
game.
I expected. Yeah.
I got pulled into it because of a series of alliances. And so it just takes forever to play out because now everyone is making these big military moves, and turns take 5 minutes now because everything's resolving and stuff's being calculated. Because nukes are such a thing that happens in Civ games, you can't have the nukes are immune from the quick combat. So each time one launches, you watch the full thing happen. It takes a good 20 seconds. So if there's multiple launches in a turn, it's gonna drag out the in-between turn times. But it's finally over. Done. I can finally play the game and enjoy it again.
Nice.
And after the podcast last week, I started playing Star Trek Resurgence.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
I
have not finished it. You can see what I mean. It's very rough.
It is. I would say early beta.
It seemed like there's a lot of alpha. There's a lot of stuff that seems like it's alpha footage.
Yeah, that's what I mean by early. I mean first draft beta. Just out of alpha, they're putting it into beta. There's a moment where one of the characters looks down at some probes and his head severs from his body.
That happens in Final Fantasy.
It's not
what happens with the sword though.
Yeah, not just looking down. Right. It's not in combat. He just looks down on an object and his head is not part of his body anymore.
Yeah, it's too bad.
A neat trick.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I haven't looked up. I was planning on doing something with Resurgence, but I just haven't been back to it because I was doing other stuff, and it's okay, I'm gonna have to, figure out what to do here. So yeah, but I have not looked up if they've said they're gonna update it or if they're working on patches. Mm-hmm. But at release date, it feels like an early access release.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know how far you got into it, but there have been
Pretty
a few
far.
There have been a few cutscenes that have been conversations where the camera goes to a person, but it's focusing on the wall behind them, so the person's just blurry while they're talking.
I don't think I have seen that. Wow. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think I have seen that.
Yeah. So not the best made game.
Put it
lightly.
Put it lightly.
And then I text you last week a possible canon error with the prevalence of certain ships. Yes, because it's one of the few things that I know definitively with Star Trek is there's a ship called a Nova class, and at the time that Resurgence was made, there's only 4 made. There's like 4 or 5 that have been made. And there just happens to be one at this starbase.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So, like, super rare ship.
Yeah.
You just happen to see one, and it's just, in the background doing its own thing.
Yeah.
Hanging out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to go back to Resurgence, but
No,
it's
you
just
Well,
because they clearly have a really interesting. Because if I were to sit down and come up with a Star Trek scenario for a tabletop game, it's not that difficult.
No.
Making it good is difficult, but just coming up with some kind of real world conflict is not that difficult, right? In the game, it's not. It's one race is exploited. The labor of one race is exploited by another race. You have power dynamics. The Federation is there to mediate. Home run, easy idea to build out from. But it gets really weird, and a lot of character stuff is. I have not finished the game, so I don't know if things get picked up eventually. But
I don't know how much I want to talk about it then, because I played it for about 4 hours, 4.5, 5.
I don't know the name of the episode I got to. Yeah. Okay. Well,
but it does pick up, and a lot does, like, the power dynamics do change completely.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
And it does have the groundwork for being a really good Star Trek story.
I would agree. Yeah.
But I just don't think it's being executed very well.
And part of that is just the technical. Nothing. Did you fly? So you flew You flew the shuttlecraft.
The shuttles, yeah.
Nothing feels good. You shot a phaser.
Yeah.
Does not feel good. Like nothing in that. Yeah, it's too bad. So I think it just wasn't finished. It's weird.
I'm trying to remember the development team that made it.
I don't remember.
But they're definitely going for a Telltale style game.
Yes, which is an obvious idea, which is like perfect.
And for Star Trek, that type of game will work because it's very much information gathering and then interpersonal drama, which that's Star Trek. So again, all the groundwork is there. Everything is in place. I just think maybe it needed more time in the oven.
A lot more time.
But yeah. They put it in for 5 seconds, took it out. It's done. And it's still, soupy cake batter.
Okay. So we will we'll hit a break and we'll go on to some news. Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server. Okay, so we're going to get into this this FTC Xbox lawsuit. I think what's going on right now is the FTC is seeking for an injunction to hold off the acquisition. Even the law just doesn't make sense. I had thought the acquisition was stopped, but I guess it's just been paused. So the FTC is now arguing to get a judge to enact an injunction that will pause the hearing, pause the merger, whatever, until it actually goes to like an official court date. I don't know. But there's been tons of details about the FTC. They cross-examined Phil Spencer. They cross-examined a couple other people, Sarah Bond, which we'll get into in a second. So we're not going to be able to get all the details that came out with this hearing, and there's more stuff that's going to come down later this week. So we'll talk about that next week. But just to hit some highlights. This is from reporting by IGN, The Verge, and GamesIndustry.biz. They were all reporting different little tidbits. They all got looks at different court documents and Axios. So we sort of just collected some stuff here. Xbox VP Sarah Bond said Bobby Kotick demanded Activision Blizzard a greater revenue share to put Call of Duty on Xbox platforms. Bond also said that Xbox is not popular relative to Game Pass's other features, saying, quote, "What we found is that xCloud is really being used by our players as a feature for the console, because what people can do is when you go in to start playing a game, instead of waiting for it to download, you can start playing it right away while it's downloading in the background, and that's actually the majority of the usage of xCloud gaming today, end quote. The FTC and Microsoft argued whether the Switch should be included in its definition of the console market. And this is because Xbox says, hey, we're third. If we don't get Activision Blizzard, we're all going to die because we're third. And the FTC's like, no, you're not. Nobody gives a shit about Nintendo. You're clearly second. And so they have this bullshit argument. Tom Warren wrote a paragraph for The Verge that I really liked. To further drive home the FTC's point, Phil Spencer was questioned about how many frames per second the Xbox Series S/X consoles can support, how many FPS the Switch supports, and even the differences in GPU teraflops. At times, it felt like the FTC was minutes away from calling a PC gamer to the stand to testify about memory speeds, CPU cores, and thermal paste, end quote. In an email, here's a few more. There's tons of bombshells, of bombshells. In an email, and again, this is all coming from the cross-examination, the hearing, blah, 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 court documents. Sony Interactive Entertainment president/CEO Jim Ryan said that the Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal wasn't an exclusivity play at all. So apparently at one point he was like, they're not doing this for exclusivity, even though what PlayStation has been saying is they're doing this for exclusivity. And who knows, people can change their minds. I don't think that maybe is not what happened. Doesn't matter. Bethesda's Pete Hines revealed that an upcoming Indiana Jones game from the Machine Games was going to be a multi-platform game until Microsoft bought ZeniMax, and it became an Xbox/PC exclusive. So there's a ton of stuff to get into. And obviously that Indiana Jones thing is significant because the FTC wants to point at things and say, look, Microsoft's saying they're not going to make all these things exclusive, but look over here, and they're doing that. Yeah. Phil Spencer was even asked about Elder Scrolls 6, which apparently is still like 5 years off by his estimation.
They haven't even started it yet.
Yeah.
Even Todd Howard has specifically stated they haven't even started it yet.
It's just like, good Lord. Well, I don't know. That's so weird to have a trailer for it and then not even be that close. Anyway. So the significance behind the Indiana Jones thing is if the FTC can show that Microsoft is doing the exclusivity stuff, then that lessens their case. So that's sort of the whole thing there. Do we have any big takeaways? Do we have any big thoughts about
there was? So I mean, that last statement you just said. I'm sorry, I can't repeat it, but because they were trying to. Whatever. I was watching Tom Warren's tweets about it, and it really seemed at some points that the FTC specifically was kind of a bunch of fumbling like idiots to the point where even the judge stepped in several times and was just like, okay, can we move on? Like, you guys aren't doing anything here. So I don't. Is this still going on, or is it? Yeah.
So there's more stuff later this week.
Right.
I don't know how to pronounce his name. The CEO of Microsoft. Nyala Satel.
Oh, yeah.
Nyala. I apologize. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I've only ever read it, never actually heard it pronounced. But he is set to testify, and there's a couple of people I'm sure they're going to testify.
Right.
They had somebody from Stadia come up and testify because they were talking about xCloud stuff. So I think
a lot of information, a lot of takeaways, and a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah, it sucks that so Phil Spencer again, and I think part of the problem with something like this is that lawyers are not there to discover the truth. I hit your laptop. I'm sorry. That's okay. They're not there to discover the truth, right? It's not like both people are looking at a picture and both are sincerely trying to come up with an interpretation of this picture based in reality. The lawyers have to find an interpretation of that painting based on the needs of their clients, which means their arguments aren't necessarily always going to be sincere or forthright or honest. And another problem with this is that I completely believe that the only person in the room that had ever played a game is Phil Spencer. And obviously I'm being tongue-in-cheek, but the judge doesn't know what an Xbox is. These FTC lawyers, they have no idea what an Xbox is.
No,
they think Master
obviously
Chief.
They don't, yeah.
Master Chief, I don't know who that is. He cook something? Is he on the Food Network? They have no idea. So all these people are coming from a perspective where they don't really... Their knowledge and understanding of the market and of video games is purely through the prism of we need to prove or disprove a monopoly.
Right.
That Xbox could gain a monopoly, right? So like the thing with whether or not Nintendo constitutes a part of the market, I think I don't know. I assume you guys would agree with me that in terms of Microsoft's relationship to Sony, Nintendo's existence as a competitor exists, but not necessarily in the same way that Sony represents, right?
Yeah, right, absolutely.
Because I would assume most people, if you can afford a high-end console, at some point in the future you could probably afford another one. So if you bought an PS5 last year, I would assume a lot of people that did that could probably buy an Xbox Series X, right? And if you can do that, you can definitely buy a Switch.
Yes.
Which are far more cheaper. Also, Nintendo consoles operate on, we've joked, Nintendo operates in their own universe because they have their own games, they have their Mario stuff, they have their Legend of Zelda stuff. They don't have to compete necessarily in the same arenas when it comes to Call of Duties, and that's what this that's a huge case. That's a huge issue in this court case. So when Microsoft says they're third in market share, I think we have all collectively rolled our eyes because while yes they compete with Nintendo, I don't necessarily think they view Nintendo as a threat to their business.
Correct.
Right?
Correct, yes.
Where you could make an argument that Sony is because they're competing on the same playing field.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you were going to say something.
They're both right and wrong at the same time.
Yes.
Like they're technically correct.
If we want
to look at numbers, yes, they are third. But as far as how it matters in the scheme of things, like realistically, yeah, for them, yeah, like you said, Sony is the one that they need to be quote unquote worried about.
Yes, and
if they're worried about anything,
exactly, yeah. And they need to prove that they want to be third. It's important. Like they have to prove that. Mm-hmm. It's like I don't know. It's like there are traditional Catholics that believe the earth is the center of the universe, right? And the only reason they believe this is because if they can prove that, then they can prove their religion is true. So they're starting from a point of like, I already believe this. So Microsoft is starting from a point of we need to prove that we're poor. So to do this, we have to make the argument, whether or not it's actually true, that we're third in market share.
Yeah. But
that third in market share is like, yeah, you might actually be, but in the context of like high-end consoles and stuff like that, I don't think Nintendo is actually like a threat or that you actually are considering them all the time when you're making business decisions and stuff like that, like you do with Sony. Phil Spencer reiterated how important mobile was to this. And I find that interesting because I don't know, how so let's talk about let's give into their argument. Let's say, okay, Microsoft, you're third. Oh no. Why is that? Why are you third, Microsoft? Is it because Sony and Nintendo have powerhouse mobile divisions? No,
not at all.
Because neither of them do. So again, why are you third? Is it because with the Xbox One, you did something dumb, and instead of focusing on the creative endeavors of your console, like Nintendo did, or like, well, Nintendo also had to sort of reinvent themselves kind of with the Switch, but content is one of their main approaches. And Sony, content was a big part of their approach.
Yes.
And that wasn't necessarily true with the Xbox. So now you're here. So it's like, I don't know. They're saying we need mobile, but the two competitors ahead of them, Sony is ramping up their mobile division, but their success in the past decade has not come from mobile. So it's like, I don't know. Do you see that? There's like a disconnect there for me, because it seems like if you want to beat Sony so bad and you're so afraid of being third, why don't you do what Sony did and do it better than them? And I feel like you have the capacity to do that, but you haven't. So now you're just buying you're just trying to get Candy Crush money. Like that's really what it comes down to. And that's frustrating. That's too bad, you know?
It is. And it's interesting because as I think about it, we talk about a lot of the mistakes that Xbox made, but it's very interesting because Sony made also just as big as a mistake with the PS3 and having to develop a new like processor, the cell processor they called it. But what they ended up doing is they ended up creating something that was difficult to develop for, which caused that setback for X amount of years before they started focusing solely on good software. And then with the PS4 and on, they had an architecture that was very close to PCs that it would just be easier to develop for. So they don't really have to deal with thinking about that. They can focus on the software, and that's where they have the head start or the leg up. Whereas Microsoft, 360 era, of course, was on top of the world, so to speak. And then they had that big flub with Xbox One, not necessarily dealing with the architecture of the system. We're talking about the presentation, the marketing of it, the functionality of the console. They were trying to do something. Yeah. They were trying to force something that people didn't want. And they have not necessarily learned the lesson, but instead of pivoting and making good software, they said, whoa, let's focus on making the good hardware. And that's all they've been trying to do. Like every time the Xbox One X, the Xbox Series X, it's always been, this is the most powerful machine yet, but that doesn't matter when you don't have the software to back it up.
You don't have quality of content.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I am not, and just to be clear, and I'm not saying you're saying this, I'm just saying in general, I hope I didn't destroy your sticker.
I destroy my own stickers.
I am not a fan of I'm not like rooting for Xbox. I'm not rooting for Sony. I am rooting for good video games, and commerce gets in the way. So all these companies suck, and they've all been moronic at one point. They're all currently being moronic in one way or another.
Absolutely.
So, if tomorrow Xbox launched like a bunch of the best games ever, I would be more than thrilled. I couldn't wait to get my hands on them, right? The other thing is they talk about, this is another thing Phil Spencer has said, that the console gaming market has stagnated. It's not growing, right? Which I think is somewhat interesting. But I haven't looked at the stats, so I don't necessarily think it's unbelievable. But more people are gaming than ever. You would think that would lead to wider markets. Maybe that's not necessarily true. But I think, okay, if the console market is stagnating, then maybe it just stagnates. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like at some point, like we live on a planet with a finite number of human beings. At some point, every single market for every single consumer product
will stagnate.
Is going to run into a finite thing that it could possibly do.
Yeah.
If a movie came out and every single person on Earth bought and watched this movie once, like that's the max number, unless you... I don't know, made a clone facility and you made a bajillion Jango Fett's to watch it, you're going to run into so I guess to bring this back, it's like, okay, then in that stagnated market, why don't you make the most of it like Sony has and develop good games? And Phil may say, Tyler, we have, but we need to do this and we need to do that. And I guess that's what frustrates me, is it just feels like Microsoft wants mobile money. They want they just want mobile money, and that's really what it comes down to, and everything else is just excuses.
Guarantee they're gonna grab that mobile money and try to integrate it in their like Windows store on all PCs so that they have access to that on their It's just another way to integrate it into their services.
Yeah, and I feel like if I don't know, like console gaming may not be something that you can take over the world with from a business standpoint. So stop trying to do that. And if you don't want to have that business because you can't rule the world with it, then stop. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I guess that's what's frustrating. Is I feel like it's all within Microsoft's ability to do all these things. And there's just so many excuses being thrown around. And maybe that's why the whole we're third in market share argument bothers me so much. because it's like you can do the things that Sony is doing, but look at how you handled Halo Infinite. Complete clusterfuck, and there's no reason it had to be that way.
Yeah.
You know? And, you know, you've got a lot of games in the works. There's a story about Perfect Dark today that apparently Perfect Dark is still like in pre-production or something with IGN. We're not going to talk about it because I literally just saw it. That may be something we'll touch on next week. But so I'm a believer that you want to let creatives have room, but I also think yes, realistically, you have to eventually release something. You got to have that completion urgency, right? So it's like, where has that been? Where is the management of that been? And what has happened? So I don't know. They have not succeeded, but I feel like it's in Microsoft's ability to do all that stuff. And instead, it's, well, let's just get Candy Crush.
Yeah. And
that's the answer. And that's frustrating because I don't feel like that has to be the answer. The whole Jim Ryan thing doesn't really surprise me. I really don't know what PlayStation actually thinks. I just think PlayStation doesn't like the idea of their main competitor gaining any ground. And maybe that's just the nature of it.
Probably. That seems like Jim Ryan.
Yeah.
Never liked that guy. Never liked that guy.
Yeah, he always came off a little weird, didn't he? Let's get Laden. I'd never pronounce it.
Sean
Layden back in there. And then of course Nintendo's doing their own thing. So I feel like I feel like I've said everything. Oh, and I think just because I'm bitter about it, I think it's always important to ask Xbox why they're here. And I'm repeating myself now. But why are you here? And it's your own damn fault. If you didn't try to do what you did with the Xbox One, you wouldn't be here right now. So cry about being in third place all you want. Make all the weird arguments you want to make. But it's your own damn fault. Because with the Xbox 360, with Halo, with Gears, with Call of Duty, I mean, at one point, PlayStation titles were being brought over to Xbox, right? Metal Gear Solid eventually was brought over to Xbox. Final Fantasy was brought over to Xbox, and at one point in time, those were PlayStation titles, weren't they? Yeah. A long time ago. But
did you read the Metal Gear story?
No, I did not.
Metal Gear Solid 4 apparently was running beautifully on 360.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah, a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
But it would have been like 7 discs or something.
But like at one point, PlayStation was famous for certain, I think maybe people that are younger than us that have grown up with certain franchises being like on both consoles. Yeah. At one point, that wasn't necessarily the case. And Xbox was winning. And Xbox was winning because PlayStation did something dumb, as you explained. And then they did that dumb thing. And PlayStation went from there. So I don't know. I don't buy a lot of the arguments that they're making. I think, as naive as it sounds, I think Phil Spencer is sincere. He said under oath today. Someone said, well, you say, maybe not under oath. I don't know about the legal term. But they asked, will you... I'm going to paraphrase. They asked something like, will Call of Duty not be an exclusive? And he said something like, I'll put my hand up, I'll swear under oath that Call of Duty, we will not exclusivize Call of Duty. But he went
on the PS5.
On the PS5, yes. Yeah. But he wasn't, there were certain things he was being sort of like side-eye, talking out of the side of his mouth about. Because at the end of the day, Phil Spencer is a company man. So anyway, back to my original point. The Xbox is here, and it's your own damn fault. The decisions that were made with the Xbox One were monumentally stupid, overcomplicated, and dumb. And I don't know who made that decision. I don't know what collection of people made those decisions. But the fallout has been massive. And now we're here. But, you know, it doesn't mean you can't be PlayStation and work on exclusives and be fine. I don't know. Whatever. So, yeah, that's all I want to say about this, I guess.
And even then, at the end of the day, as long as PlayStation keeps doing what they're doing, I don't think they're in any real danger.
No.
Like, well, there is no danger in this whole thing. Like, it's just wanting a bigger piece of the pie.
Wanting a bigger piece of the mobile pie.
The proverbial
pie,
yeah.
And again, is it that Microsoft that the Xbox division can't survive with a mobile division? Or is it just they would like it to be making Candy Crush money?
They want it to be making Candy Crush money, yes, sir.
And as nice as Sony, as nice as it is for Sony making the money that they make from Horizon Zero Dawn and all their exclusives, Microsoft is like, yeah, that's nice and that's cool and that's what the people on Twitter complained about, but we want the Candy Crush money. And that's what the executives are thinking. Because this whole thing is just about a game where you pop fucking candies that have the same colors, and that's absurd that it's so... Okay, anyway.
It's those moms, man, and grandmas.
Who's going to talk about Alan Wake 2?
Sorry, real quick. One thing that in here... these all came out from hearings, right?
Yes. Yeah, there's there's court documents hearings.
Court documents hearings. The Pete Hines thing about exclusive Indiana Jones games. A while back, when we were still covering this, CMA pointed out streaming. I think it was there.
Game streaming. Oh yeah, I completely forgot about that. Yeah.
This I said this back then that it felt like they didn't have anything to go on, so they just started pointing at things that could potentially be dangerous. Well, not dangerous, but
harmful to
the industry, whatever. This one, an Indiana Jones exclusive game, kind of feels like that too, because I don't know how big the market is for Indiana Jones games. Maybe a Lego Indiana Jones game. But I don't know.
Yeah, and again, the whole point behind that was to say, look, Microsoft has already done the exclusivity with these games, right? You could point at Redfall, you could point at Elder Scrolls 6.
Yes.
Actually, but that does remind me, because it was funny, Sarah Bond was essentially like, yeah, no one uses xCloud.
Yeah.
And the CMA a couple months ago was like, if we allow this, Microsoft will own...
Cloud gaming is doomed.
Cloud gaming
That's
is
what
over.
cloud gaming.
Microsoft will own the cloud streaming, cloud gaming service with an iron fist.
And what's it being used for? To download your game while you play it.
Yeah, to play your game while it downloads. Yeah, they're just like, no one
actually
uses it.
They use it for one feature, for one convenience feature, and they ignore everything else.
And I just thought that was funny. And these are said, in a hearing in legal documents and stuff. So, okay, let's move on to Alan Wake 2. Who's
At the
talking?
PlayStation Showcase,
There we go.
Alan Wake 2 was revealed, and very soon after, they had announced that Alan Wake 2 was going to be digital only to save money for the consumers and have it kept at a low price of $59.99 and the PC version at $49.99. Today, I think it was today, right?
Today or yesterday.
Remedy expanded on their decision for having digital only, and they stated that Remedy bullshit. Alan Wake 2 will be digital only, so Remedy can polish it more. Once again, it will not have a physical edition. They also Remedy did not want to release a game disc with a download to accompany it, as they don't think this is a great experience. And of course, negative feedback was given towards Jedi Survivor, because you pretty much have to download the entire game, even though you have the disc.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Like 160 gigs, baby.
Okay.
An interview with Eurogamer, creative director Sam Lake and game director Kyle Rowley added some detail, with Rowley saying, quote, "As creatives, obviously, by going digital only, it does allow us more time to polish the game, like a significant amount of weeks, actually, because otherwise the game that goes on the disc obviously has to be playable without a patch. We didn't want to release something that we weren't proud of, basically, and that we didn't want players to play. So hopefully this way we can give you a better version of the game," end quote. If you don't know, when a game goes gold, that's usually like a month and a half, sometimes 2 months before the game actually releases. So that's when you have to stop working on it. It does give more time, but
Yeah.
if you're going to say anything.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is weird. The whole thing just seems weird. I don't necessarily think it's bad. As from a preservation standpoint, it does bother me a little bit, but like preservation is in a crisis at the moment anyway. So with all kinds of think about all the games on Steam by smaller developers and stuff that don't have physical editions, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So that's always terrifying to consider.
And even then, when you want a physical version of that game, you're gonna pay out the ass for it because of collectors, of course.
That happened recently with the Metroid Prime remake or remastered, the one that came out this year. Right. Like the physical editions were super expensive. A bunch of assholes were getting them.
Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster is having that right now as well.
I think it's strange, but I don't necessarily think it's bad. And and I guess their reasoning makes sense. But the only thing I think is strange is that first the answer was to save money, and I was like, and that opens a can of worms, because it's like, are you telling me that not having a physical edition shaves $10 off the price of a game? But then it's like, well, it's to keep the price down, and so we can polish it more. It just seems like it's a lot of weird answers. They could all be true. I'm not saying there's nothing nefarious going on here. I just thought it was.
I would imagine that Remedy is. When I think about Remedy, their first game was, I don't know if they had a game before, but the first game was Max Payne. And although Max Payne 1 and 2 is a very beloved series, and it did sell a good amount, their next game was Alan Wake, which...
Really?
Yes.
Between Max Payne 1 and 2 was Alan Wake?
Yeah, pretty certain. Which did okay and has now a bigger following than it used to, but it wasn't like a huge seller for Microsoft. And then we have Control. Well, they did Alan Wake's American Nightmare, whatever. Control, I think, was their next game afterwards, because they did not do Max Payne 3. That was Rockstar. Control, which that launch, along with its physical versions and everything, got super botched by 505 Games.
Yeah, there was a whole bunch of weird stuff that was going on.
And also Control sold fine. I think Remedy is just being overly cautious about not releasing a physical version, because they probably don't want to use the money for something that historically in their history doesn't sell well.
Okay.
I'm not saying this is the answer either. I'm just kind of musing at why could they be this way?
Do you know off the top of your head if Alan Wake 2 is going to be exclusive to the Epic Game Store on PC?
It is, yes.
It is? Okay. So there's another case of maybe they're getting funding from a different...
Right.
Which Control was also an Epic Game Store exclusive. So that may have been a relationship that they got with Control, and they decided to skip out on 505.
Sure.
Yeah, there was a bunch of weird stuff that 505 did with I forget now, but the different editions, the streaming thing on the Switch.
Yeah. It is also weird because there are plenty of solutions for that. For this situation, we have, when I mentioned it last time, we have THQ offered to pay the production costs for the physical versions of the game. In their when they first announced this, THQ came in and was like, "Hey,
really? I did not know that."
Yeah. It was one of their spokespersons, so I don't know if it was like a official thing.
THQ spokespeople, they like to live on the edge.
Well, they do have to get okay before they post stuff, as far as I'm aware. And then, but they could also do what Nintendo has done and other publishers have done, is release the digital version of the game, then about a month later release the physical version. That's what happened with the Metroid Prime remaster, and that's what happened with another game recently, Grim Guardians, and some others. They released a digital version, and about a month later, 2 months later, they released a physical version. So, but yeah, this is their choice, I guess.
I wonder what they expect the sales of Alan Wake 2 to be, because Alan Wake 2, 2010, that was 12 years ago. It's a beloved game, but Remedy is sort of a... I don't know. Remedy is like the Alex Garland of video game developers. It's the guy that wrote Nex Machina and a couple other movies, one of the Cloverfield sequels, I think. So it's like there's a market for that, but I wonder if they're afraid that already them being sort of one of those smaller end AAA developers, and they're releasing a sequel, and it's in a year that is so crowded because you have Starfield coming out, and
the month before,
there's a bunch of stuff coming out in October. I'm forgetting 4 games,
but
there's a ton of shit coming out in October.
The landscape is different now than it was when the first Alan Wake came out. Alan Wake 2, as far as I'm aware, as far as that I've seen from publications, is that Alan Wake 2 won most of the Summer Games Fest game of the show. They have that going for it. Another thing they have going for is now that they're going a more survival horror route, we have the streamer aspect to it.
Oh yeah, that's true.
We have how many people are going to be excited about this game because it's a new survival horror game, and it has that interesting television-esque
Yeah.
approach to it, which, by the way, that sparked my brain. Quantum Break. They did Quantum Break.
Oh, that's the other one. Yep, that's one.
Which was also very good.
Okay, that's the one. Yeah, so I wonder how we'll... And that was an Xbox exclusive, wasn't it?
Xbox. Yeah, that was Xbox exclusive. So was Alan Wake.
Yeah, that was one of those. Yeah, I don't know if that sold well. I have no idea.
Fun.
It was fun. It was.
I never played it. Is it worth going back?
I think so. I think so, especially for Lance Reddick, of course.
Oh man, yeah. Okay.
No, they did something interesting that it didn't work for most people, but yeah, if you play the game and then you download the show. Because they made a show that goes with it.
Holy crap! I did not know any.
Yeah.
of this.
Yeah. So
okay.
It is what you do is you play a chapter of the game and then you watch an episode of the show. You kind of like do it back and forth.
Holy shit! I didn't know about any of this.
Yeah. And so what it did is the show focuses on some of the side characters that are involved in the main game.
Wow. All right.
But it comes together pretty nicely, like towards the end. Like it answers some smaller questions that you may have.
It's on Game Pass, so maybe.
Yeah, it's going to be a big download, just to let you know.
Oh.
Because those episodes are very very big, but it is also connected to the Alan Wake and Control universe. I would say that the powers and like the gunplay combat is fun enough, but it wasn't anything to like. Better than Alan Wake, but not as good as Control.
Control was very good.
Right.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a fairly entertaining game. But that aspect is very cool. And I think it comes together well. It's just, people didn't want to do that back then. But now that TV has gotten so big, people might.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Alan Wake 2. And I have watched that trailer probably like 5 times now. And every single time, it gives me chills every single time. One of the FBI agents picks up one of the pages and says, "It's about us." And then it cuts to Sam Lake and he's just like, he just turns like bewildered at the camera. And then there's that scene where Alan Wake's like, "We're stuck in a horror story and it's trying to kill us." Like, oh man, I'm so psyched. Like, so psyched for this weird horror, like weird David Lynchian, like surreal horror stuff. I really hope it just melts my eyes. Are we ready for? Go ahead, Connor.
But I just want to circle back and touch real quick on the pricing for saving money. Their claim. Little tidbit about the music industry that I like to tell people because they didn't know what they were paying for when they were buying music on iTunes. Is there was a packaging price, like packaging was included in the pricing for your digital music. So these games can be sold cheaper digital only. Because if they, keep up with the trends, then the companies that are selling the game are going to be including that quote packaging pricing, even though there is literally no packaging to be included with something digital. Which all of that does go into the total cost of the game because you do have to purchase the CDs, the physical cases themselves, artwork for the cover, print, all of that, and just a little bit that is good that it's going digital only. Less plastic that's being produced that could just be thrown away. Always nice.
Yeah. I think mathematically it makes sense. So why haven't we seen the price go down? The economics behind that, I don't know.
60% of the time it works every time.
Let's go to tidbits. What if I told you, in this world, there are bits, and there are tids, and Richard is the only man who can put them together into tidbits.
I got a couple quick ones and a couple long ones. 6 Days in Fallujah is out? I didn't know that. 6 Days
in Fallujah, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't know that was out, so.
Oh, that's the only
tidbit.
tidbit.
That's the tidbit. That's that tidbit. I'm moving on. Horizon Forbidden West has added a tribute to the late Lance Reddick.
Oh, man.
Players in game on Horizon Burning Shores. I think it's in Burning Shores.
Okay.
You can run off to a specific location to find a hologram memorial for the late actor who played Silence in the series. But it's a very nice little thing. So.
One of my favorite Lance Reddick things was he was on the Eric Andre show, and it seemed like
where's my iconic slave role?
It seemed like he wasn't in on the joke.
Mm-hmm.
And LeVar Burton came out dressed in a cop uniform saying, "I wish I was Lance Reddick," screaming. And then like later on in that episode, Lance Reddick walks out. Of course, he's ripped.
Yeah.
And he's
The
parroting
chains, yeah.
LeVar Burton's Roots character, and he's got Jordy's
visor,
and he's saying,
he has the
little
pin too, or the Starfleet
and he's
thing.
saying super straight faced, "I wish I was LeVar Burton," like in his deep voice. And so I love that because it seemed like he wasn't in on the joke.
Yeah.
And then he was doing the absurd thing to reverse it. So that was a great moment. Anyway.
Yeah, I love that guy. Damn it. Google is testing out playing games through YouTube. Google is reportedly testing out a new program called Playables that would let users play online games right in their browsers through the YouTube app. Wall Street Journal broke the news, and the report says that YouTube Playables is something that would... Oh, wait, I already repeated that. Wow. It would start playing instantly via YouTube as long as they're on the iOS, Android app, or on the site via PC browser. The only game that is known about right now is Stack Bounce, a game where you control the ball and smash it through obstacles. This is being play tested by specific programmers in Google right now, so it's just something that they're trying to...
Okay, they kind of tried that with Stadia.
Well, they're pivoting the Stadia tech to kind of go to YouTube, which is originally what they announced in the first place, but never did.
Yeah, a lot of their games industry just released a study this week. It was Humble Games talked with 5,000, did a survey of 5,000 people, and in it was why do you buy indie games and how do you make your decision? One of the main takeaways from the study was that a lot of these players see the games on YouTube and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So YouTube has this really strong connection to gaming, except there's just nothing related. It's like ESPN. Yeah. ESPN has SportsCenter, but for a long time, ESPN has had to struggle to get sports. Not for a long time. For a period of time, it's they did all they could to actually get sports onto the channel.
Yeah, right.
In the same way that so much of YouTube is video game related, but they don't have games integrated. So it doesn't surprise me, but I don't trust YouTube with anything. So, and that's probably why. And that's probably because they're connected to Google. But. Yeah.
I'm going to go through this next thing real quick. Nintendo Direct was last week, kind of a surprised one. They announced it 10 hours before they showed off, but announced some neat things. We got a Super Mario RPG remake, Detective Pikachu 2, HD versions of Pikmin 1 and 2, a new Princess Peach game, which is pretty cool, a new Mario game with a really unique kind of art style to it, and probably one of my favorite announcements, Vampire Survivors on Switch finally, but with co-op.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, 4-player co-op. Yeah, they're adding it to all versions, but it'll be when the Switch version comes out, which is August 12th, I think, or August 16th.
Seems like that would get insane.
Yeah. they would have to add some new modes to it to bring in more enemies, because I think it happens with Diablo. The more players you play with, the harder it gets, or something like that. I can't remember, but and then this is the last tidbit. Some new info on the very unique game we saw at the Xbox showcase, South of Midnight.
Okay.
So the day they announced it, or the day after they announced it, they put up a blog post with tons of information about the game.
Oh, really?
That they did not give us when they revealed the game.
Okay.
Which is weird, but I'll list off some of the stuff. The main character's name is Hazel. And it's a third-person action-adventure game set in a magic realist version of the American South. The settings you travel will be mostly rural, with the sense of having urban legends and myths being something that's just over your backyard fence. At least that's what the creative director stated. They coexist with each other, the real world, but they also say that it's kind of one of those things where the farther you go from the main city, the more magical it becomes, because that's where it's kind of uninterrupted by stuff. The blog post is fairly meaty. Lots of info and words from the creative director, David Sears. Information about enemies, abilities, characters, and locations are in that blog, and it's really something that I think definitely could have been used in the reveal trailer somehow.
The trailer was cool. It was
a very cool trailer, yeah. But it's unfortunate because it was one of those things that's just, all right, well,
there wasn't a ton of gameplay.
Yeah,
it was
what is this about? What are we doing?
Yeah, okay.
But that's it for Tidbits.
Alrighty. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse, Gaming Discourse FM. And we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.